Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Glendale Housing Authority meeting of May 6th, 2008, the day after Cinco de Mayo. Believe it or not, half the year is almost gone. May we have a roll call for the council who's here?
Housing Authority?
Housing Authority.
Yeah.
And the council.
Authority members: Draymond.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Karazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here. May we have your report, please?
The agenda for the May 6, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, May 1st, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, may we have, what's next, please?
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No abstentions. So the minutes will stand approved as submitted. Next, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited time. It's not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Housing Authority may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and report.
I have one card, Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Your name for the record.
My name is Herbert Milano, members of the Housing Authority and City staff. Recently, I've decided to take a look at some of the economic statistics with regard to the labor and wages and salaries for middle and lower middle income people. And I find that since the year 2002, there has actually been a decrease in the actual net income from 0.1% to 2% since 2002. Actually decrease in the buying power of this group. And I keep thinking about the idea that I'd like to promote to help replenish the food pantries of the charitable organizations in Glendale. And the idea that I presented to you before is perhaps encouraging city employees, because there's a fairly good-sized group, to donate at least one bag of groceries per month to these charities to ensure that they have a significant amount of sustainability. I know that the increase in the price of food is probably hitting a lot of these very same groups very, very hard, and I just want to give a reminder that those individuals, when they pay their water bill or they pay for their rental, monthly rental fees, about 1 month of rent actually goes into tax, property tax. And when they buy food, and when they buy other items within the city, those sales taxes goes to replenish the coffers. So I think it is the best thing that we could do to at least help those individuals who are in the most need. At least promote an idea of taking a grocery bag, once a month, until the economy improves. Thank you.
Thank you. That was my only card. What's next, please?
Is there any authority member or staff comments?
Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, we have a business. Sorry. I did not see that. I know, I was jumping the gun. Next item.
Under 6A is Director of Community Development and Housing regarding quality of life indicators update oral report. Sorry.
Okay. Adler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Housing Authority. You had asked a couple of weeks ago for an update on the quality of life indicators project, and Sam Engel is here to give you a status report. But in looking back at it, what we realized is that this was a project of the Healthier Cities Coalition, and they initiated it. That initially started with the 3 hospitals, and they initiated it under the leadership of Tom Miller. And I'm going to ask Sam to give you a very brief overview of the process that took place and where we are now, and why that project has pretty much come to a standstill. So, Sam.
Madam, may I ask, is this a follow-up on the report you already provided to all of us?
Yes, it is. You don't need it. If you have adequate information from the written report,
Read the
then
report.
I like to hear from Sam, because we get a report individually. This issue was brought up by the public. We talked about it, that we're going to let the public know what's going on. So the other 200,000 people in this town do not get a report from the staff. So I think it's important for the public to know what's going on. just not me.
Madeline, I was not objecting, I was just saying, is it a follow-up on what we
Yeah.
already read?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you.
Sam?
Chair Yusefi and members of the Housing Authority. The quality life indicators is this document right here so that we all, members of the public, can know what we're talking about. As Madeline had indicated, this was a project of the Healthier Community Coalition, and it was one of the projects that we as a city set out to do to maintain our status as a California healthy city. I don't know that any of you were on the council at the time, but one of the projects of a previous city council was for us to apply for and secure a designation as a California healthy city. And at one point, we were one of the largest cities in California to have that designation, and we're one of the few that still maintains it by maintaining the requirements to maintain that designation year after year. Part of what we had to do to establish our designation as a California healthy city was to conduct a needs assessment for our community in terms of what was needed in terms of environmental health, in terms of the physical and mental health of our residents. And a broad community coalition was established to do this, with the city as the lead agency, as the representative to California Department of Health for our designation as a California healthy city. But a part of that coalition were the 3 hospitals, as Madeline Blake mentioned, the school district, the community college, and in large part the Chamber of Commerce, because from the state perspective, there was a tremendous role for the business community in that effort. There were a number of projects that this coalition has undertaken over the years. As a matter of fact, there's a bunch of projects that they're involved with right now. Initially, they did a community health needs assessment that was a community-wide survey. The first one that had ever been done was done jointly in cooperation with the 3 hospitals, and it established health trends for our community, one of which that initially came out with was the incidence of AIDS, HIV in our community, and the need to have a effort targeted in this community for addressing those kind of things. So the very first project, the coalition, back in 1994 was an AIDS, HIV awareness, which actually over the course of time, measured by the hospital data, showed that we met the outcomes that we intended to do in terms of reducing that. One of the projects that emerged out of that, after a variety of these things, including flu immunization and different things, was an effort that is modeled after what communities are doing throughout the world, which is measuring what constitutes quality of life in communities. And there are a number of cities, if you go on the internet and look this up, there are cities throughout the world that this is their planning document. And through the California Department of Health, they were encouraging local communities to undertake these grassroots efforts in the community. And we felt that we were well established to do that, and that we had an active coalition in the community with the hospitals, the school district, all those partners that were involved, as well as the nonprofit community, to be able to do a community-based assessment. And over the course of 3 years, the coalition conducted outreach meetings, or they convened subcommittees, they conducted outreach meetings, took a bunch of information, synthesized it down, broadened the scope again, ultimately ended up with what they felt as a community-based organization were things that actually measured the quality of life in our community. And that, out of that emerged this document. From all of that data, staff and neighborhood services were responsible to compile that and put it into a format that was usable for a number of things. Primarily, from the coalition's perspective, is that this provided documentation for the nonprofit community to use for grant applications, because frequently the nonprofit community is applying for them. They say, what do you base your needs on? And they were able to pull out a document that had fact-based indicators that they could use for that. And without going, and I don't have the list here, but it's been very successful for those nonprofits to be able to use this as a source document for needs in our community, which takes to what the process was that, as we as coalition thought was important, is that this was a 5-year document. That every 5 years you'd pull out the indicators, you'd measure where you were relative to that particular benchmark and see whether or not you've improved or gotten worse or stayed the same, and then evaluate whether or not that was acceptable. So where we were at the end of this is how do you come together to do the next recompilation or the reassessment of each of these indicators? And that's where we are now. The coalition hasn't taken it on as a committee project at this point. Lynn Brandstater is our current chair. She took over when Tom Miller passed away. Actually, she was elected. That, in fairness to Lynn, a nomination committee was formed, and Lynn was nominated and ultimately elected to chair the coalition. There's a bunch of projects that she is pushing as chair of the coalition. This is one of the projects that's in the hopper. It's not one that's currently being addressed by the coalition. In anticipation of a couple of questions, there are a couple of steps that are outstanding or that need to be done to update this. One of them is an assessment of the validity of the actual indicators. You've got a number of indicators here. After 5 years, are these really valid for assessing the quality of life in the community? Once that's done, you have to kind of look at what's called a gap analysis. Are there places where we just missed the boat, things that we should have evaluated that we didn't, or things where the measurement really doesn't tell us anything, a gap in the assessment, and then ultimately the remeasurement of whatever you come up with, either the indicators we did before or filling in where the gaps were. That's a community process, and it will be intensive for the coalition if they do that. Typically, with the Healthier Community Coalition, the staff participation from the city on that coalition has come from 3 departments: the police department, the library, and community development housing. As Mr. Weaver noted, that was noted in the staff report, that when we did this outreach assessment, that those 3 departments played critical roles in actually staffing each of these citizen committees to come up with this. So if we're going to go forward with this, it'll probably involve some staff commitment to do this again, but it will also involve a community involvement effort, because these truly are community-based. Unlike our long-range plan, which is a city document, these are truly community indicators that have really emerged from the community. That said, once all of that's done, somebody then has to take whatever comes out of that process and put it into this format. And we in Neighborhood Services actually dedicated a staff person for about 4 months. They weren't working on it full-time, but a significant amount of time to do this, to compile the data and then put it in a presentation form so that it's usable. And that's kind of where we are at this point. There's not staff dedicated to it, but conversely, the work hasn't emerged out of the coalition to cause that to happen at this point.
My question is, last time when we did this, how much did the city contribute as far as financially, whether it be staff time or whatever we spent to print these things? How much did we spend last time to create the work document?
I don't know that you had any, Chair Yousefian and members of the authority, I don't know that there was direct assessment. Certainly, the library dedicated staff people towards the work of the coalition, Mary Miller being the current representative that was there, Leif Nicolaisen being the lead person from the police department that was helping us. Obviously, it wasn't direct money to pay for this. Leif's was kind of an in-kind contribution to do that, as was mine. And
but you had a person who was working on this project for 4 months.
Right.
So.
And then we dedicated an administrative analyst to this, actually administrative associate at the time, to this, and there was about 4 months. So whatever the salary would have been for that, for about half time for 4 months to do this.
Does the coalition put any money into the project? Or it just, everyone in the coalition is just
contributes very similar to what the city. Yeah, just like Lynn Brandstater, she's a volunteer as the chair of the coalition, and then sitting in as chairing one of the subcommittees. It would be the same as the city's contribution.
The other thing, Chair Yousefian, is at the time, there's been a considerable transition in this coalition, and at the time the hospitals took a real leadership role. There's been a lot of turnover in the staff of the hospitals as well. I think there has to be, in order for this project to be reignited, there really would need to be some initiation and motivation on the part of community organizations, and particularly the hospitals, because a lot of this came from their initiation.
Okay. Any questions? Not from the authority. I have one speaker card on this item. Herbert Milano.
Thank you, Chairman Yusefian. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the authority and city staff. When I looked at this particular document and studied it, and I thought that the purpose of it was primarily to be or to serve as a guide for policy development by the legislative body, meaning you. I did not think of it as a guide simply for nonprofits, and I did not think of it simply as a guide for hospitals and initiatives completely by charitable organizations. And I say that from the following standpoint. I don't mind telling you that I am a Democrat, with a big D, because I do believe that there's a place for government to take initiatives and lead by helping to create the type of synergy necessary to bring these things forward. Otherwise, they would not take forward. Just like the things that we do with redevelopment is derived from a governmental concept, so too can we look at these particular issues concerning society and say, here's a document that could help you develop policy. And let me give you an example. One of the data elements in here is, for example, the level of poverty, for example, or the number of families at risk, or single-family homes. And yet, the city does develop, for the Glendale Water and Power, the public benefit objectives. So how can you develop a proper public benefit objective with regard to reductions in the GWP Ps and rates to certain individuals if you don't have the core data with regard to how big is the potential need out there? So you develop it from the data that you are collecting. Let me give you another example. When I read the document, something shocked me. That was that Glendale High School had a graduation rate, according to that document, something like 96.2%. But then on another page, there was the percentage of single-family homes and people living below poverty. It was a rate like 30% or something like that. I can't remember precisely. And I said, well, those two cannot coexist. You can have a 96% graduation rate and a level of poverty that is like that. So something had to be wrong. Some figure needed to be corrected. And it's when I found out that the data from the school district was incorrect. And it had been incorrect for a long time. So they massaged the data to give the appearance that the graduation rate was larger. So through the California Records Act, I got information concerning the true graduation rate or the retention rate, entering 9th graders all the way through the 12th grade. And we graduate fewer than 80% of those kids. And depending on the ethnicity, it's as low as 60%. That's a significant problem. So if you recognize that there is a graduation problem, that would eventually, you will have to somehow attend to it by increasing, should we say, the police budget, for example. Then you think, well, a second, there's policy that we can develop to ensure that your role as the city government can fit into this somehow, either directly or indirectly, to say we have a significant problem within the city that we need to correct. And that's where the policy comes in. So there is a significant role for city government to look at this data and say what policies can we derive from this and what goals can we establish to basically resolve it. So this is not simply for charitable organizations. And if it were only for charitable organizations, then your question is, how can we assist or be a part of the sustainability of these organizations so that they stay truly viable? I don't think these things are way off the mark, except that, we need to put the energy, and I'm assuming that you guys can give us the leadership and bring forward some type of solution with regard to solving the problem of kids at risk and kids who don't graduate. It's a real problem, even though, there's a significant number in this city who are very much well off and who have perhaps, they don't see the problem day to day, but the problem is there anyway. And I think it deserves to be attention for us to have the information so that you can develop policies for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. That was my last card on this item. Madeline, when was this document was created? We actually started in '94, but this document was created in, 2001?
Yeah.
2002.
It took about 4 years from beginning to end.
Okay, so it's a 5-year document, which means it's good till 2007? Is that what it is?
That would be true, yeah.
Okay, so after 5 years, you basically go back and remeasure the stuff, and then in a new document, would you show how you fare out?
That would be the intent. 'Cause
So you have a
establishes-
document that says, let's say, in 2002, this was the poverty line, and 5 years later, 2008 or whatever, this is what it is. So at least you have something to compare, whether you're doing better, you're doing worse, whatever you're doing. So what will it take to get the hospitals and some of the other people to get motivated to actually move? Because my understanding from Sam is Coalition doesn't see this to be one of the main things that they would like to move forward. Is it lack of funding? What is it? I mean, Sam, you're in the Coalition. Why, because I get from your talk that basically this is like put on the back burner.
What I would say...
They don't see any value in it? I mean, what is...
Well, Mr. Chair, what I would say is it's a huge undertaking. It's a huge community-wide undertaking, and it would have to be a priority of the coalition and the executive committee. They would have to establish the committee structure, the leadership structure to make this happen. So that's where I think it has to come.
I understand, but they did this once. This is not a new thing. They've done it once. Is it because it was so cumbersome that they decided, you know what, I'm not going to cross that bridge again?
Well, I think to some degree it's just been a turnover of individual people. Tom Miller had different priorities. He's a different type of leader. As I say, the leadership from the hospitals has turned over. The involvement of the hospitals is not as significant as it was at the time. So you're really dealing with an entirely new group.
Okay.
Madeline's right. I mean, we talked about Tom Miller, but you think back on the group of people that were involved in this, and it included Carol Reynolds from Glendale Healthy Kids. These were truly dynamic people that were involved in the community, and that's not demeaning the people that are there now at all, but there was a dynamic group of people that were there. We have a full meeting of the Healthier Community Coalition, which is open to the entire community. It's not just the nonprofits, and it's all of the partners in the community coming up on May 20th. And obviously, I can take back to the coalition that there's at least an interest to find out how much interest there is on the coalition in carrying this forward, and see whether or not they're willing to take it on and move it from a back burner position somewhat to a front burner position. And I can report back to you. I mean, any of you are welcome to attend that meeting. It's open to anybody, but
Happens
I
to
can
be on
certainly...
council night, May
Right.
20th.
Yeah.
It's the only glitch there.
Right. But I will be happy to bring back and let you know where we are. I mean, I think the coalition members honestly would be happy that there is interest in the document. As fast as we print them up, they get used. Like Mr. Milano says, the community uses them. But let me find out from the coalition where they want to go and see if they're willing to take this on as an effort.
I also would like to know the financial implications of it. I like to get a certain dollar amount assigned to, because we use staff, you print the stuff. I like to know what that is that we're looking at. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, what's next, please? Thank you.
Is there any new business?
Hearing none,
Move we adjourn.
Second.
we're adjourned.